My name is Michael Freeston. I'm Director of Quality Improvement at the Early Years Alliance, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to this semi-structured discussion with a panel of esteemed and award-winning panelists to discuss Play My Way, My Play, My Way. I can't even say the title. This forms part of the resources and support materials that we've developed for this year's Early Years Alliance Play Week, which runs from Monday the 30th of June to Sunday the 6th of July. For members of the Early Years Alliance, you will hopefully have received promotional materials to register to secure your resources, all free. Otherwise, please visit the Early Years Alliance's website, www.eyalliance.org.uk, and you'll find directions to download the resources and register for all the activities that take place during Play Week. I will invite our panelists to introduce themselves before I take us into the discussion. Laura, do you mind if we go with you first?
Absolutely. Hello, colleagues, and you're very welcome to listening to this webinar. So my name's Laura Henry Elaine. I started off in early years, coming up to 40 years. I've had a variety of roles. I've probably done everything, so to speak. I've worked in the UK, overseas, but primarily a lot of colleagues may know me because I'm a children's author, work in children's TV, notably for Jojo and Gran Gran, which was the first Black British animation. And I still do early years because this is who I am. I am an early years person, and to use the cliche, like a rock, if he was to cut me in half, it would have early years coming through. And I'm delighted to be with so many amazing colleagues on this webinar.
Thank you. Aaron Bradbury.
Hi everybody, it's really lovely to be here for the Early Years Alliance Play Week 2025. I'm Dr. Aaron Bradbury, and just like what Laura said, really, early years is something that's threaded throughout. I started my career actually as a nursery nurse back in the 19 something, but yeah, early years is something that's really passionate to me. And my day job is actually a principal lecturer at Nottingham Trent University, and I lead such a wide team there. But more recently, I'm the editor of the Play Matters, Why Play Matters in Early Childhood. So I'm looking forward to speaking about that as well.
Thank you. And to Jenny Parpenfuss and Zoe Perkis, who are co-founders of Venture Outdoor Kindergartens, and I'm sure they'll be too modest to say it. They are the current Gold Award winners of the Pearson National Teaching Early Years Team of the Year. It's a pleasure to have you with us. Zoe, Jenny.
Hi, yeah, I'm Zoe, and this is Jenny. Yeah, we're founders of Venture Outdoor Kindergarten. We sort of, I think, both fell into working in early years accidentally, actually, about 10 years ago. But we so enjoyed working together and being outside with the children and using basically the tools that we use as our parents to our own children with the children, that we ended up starting Venture Outdoor Kindergarten. And yeah, it was meant to be just the two of us with a couple of backpacks, a small rope bus full of children, 10 or so children, and just out and about in the village of Hope Cove in South Hams. We've ended up with 3 kindergartens, 130 children, 16 staff members. So it's escalated a bit, but yeah, that's who we are and that's what's happening for us.
That's excellent. And I think that leads me on to the first topic of conversation, particularly from your particular perspective, to Jenny and Zoe. What does play mean for you, for Venture?
It's everything. So the children are obviously expressing themselves, all of their emotions, their fears, their picture of the world comes through in their play. So yeah, it just tells you everything you need to know about each individual child.
Yeah, and as a definition, I think we've just complicated it. I think we've complicated lots of things about childhood, particularly play. Play is just what children do if you leave them alone. Stand back, leave them alone. Everything that they do, they approach in a playful, curious way. If you let them. So it's literally everything that they do.
I think that leads on to Aaron. That's a theme that runs through the whole Play Matters publication and other bits of your work. Is there anything you'd like to add?
I think it's really important to say that Play Matters was because I think we are overcomplicating. I think there's too much of an educational lens on play, and education is important. Learning is very, very much important. But actually, we need to take it back to the child. We need to take it back to the joy and the fun element of what early childhood should be. And Play Matters, I think, kind of wholeheartedly talks about that. And I echo just what these guys have just said, that it's actually, let's just take a step back, because children are learning, learning is happening. It's the environment we create that really helps push that forwards.
Thank you. Laura?
Yeah, I think I agree with everything that's been said thus far, because that's why we're all here, because we're passionate about early years and play. And I think we also do need to take it back to about the child, about the unique child, and how play is different in terms of age, stage and ability appropriate. And it's not, play isn't manufactured. And I've seen that on my travels, right? It's playtime, children got to play. Well, no, actually, it's spontaneous. And as Aaron says, it's the joy within that. And recently, for the last 11 months, I'm one of the expert commissioners on the Play Commission document, and we did an interim report. And the grand finale will be on International Play Day on June the 11th. So I'm quite pleased to be there on that panel, because also to using my early years background and as a parent of a child who, well, grown up now, who was autistic. We need to be looking at that, which I'm sure will go into children who have disabilities and how they access play and have, as we say, the right to play. We cross-reference the United Nations.
Can I just pick up on that, because I think that's an important point. We entitled this year's Play Week as My Play, My Way, for reasons. Well, the question is to you, what does that title mean to you, Laura, from those distinctions you said in terms of the individuality of children?
I think it says what it does on the tin, actually. Very clever, early years alliance. Because my plays, it comes back to the point I was making about the unique child. It's my play. So every child, we could go into business here, right? Early Years Alliance, giving you an idea, create T-shirts. It's my way, because it is the child's way. It's not my way as the adult, because actually that's not play. If I say to a child, this is play, go and play with these blocks of bricks, that is not the child's way. It is the child's interpretation. It's as Aaron was saying, children are learning as they're playing. There's maths there's science, there's collaborating. So that my should be, are we seeing it from the child's perspective?
Thank you. Over to Venture. How does My Play, My Way manifest itself in your outdoor kindergarten?
I think it's quite a neat way, a short way of just saying that children know what they need. They know what they need at any point in time. And if it's not done their way, then it's what is it, the adult's way, which is basically distracting them from what valuable things they could be doing and could be learning and could be achieving. Because they're all different, you can't provide the same thing for all of them and say this is what we're doing today. So I think a lot of what adults do is actually distracting children from that play, that true play that they know what they need.
Yeah.
So what's the level of frustration if the adults create something which they feel as though is entirely what the children require, and then they completely usurp it and take it in a different direction?
Exactly. Not worth doing, is it? It's not worth planning that and thinking this is going to be the outcome, this is what they're going to do. I think that must be very frustrating, and luckily we're free of that adventure.
Excellent. Aaron?
So I've had a really hard think about it, really, and I echo what the other guys have said, but for me, I think it really gives a strong emphasis on individual agency around choice. And I think we don't talk about self-expression. For me, it allows children to really express themselves through play. It kind of gives me that implied feeling that it's about personal and unique, that it's individual to each child. And I think this is really important, that there's no right way to play. And we should value each child's approach to play. And we should respect and value that, really. One thing that really came through Play Matters, and I really want to highlight this, is that actually play allows children to be empowered. It indicates that child playing is that they're in control, and we need to allow children to be in control of their play, follow their own interests, ideas, and I think that's really important. So that's what my play, my way
all right,
means.
Let me press you on that then. In terms of, if our audience is listening to this and saying, okay, yeah, but I need an idea of what we're actually talking about here. How would you describe, Aaron, the best distinction between adult-led and child-led play?
Okay, so I have been thinking about this really, really strongly, and I think one thing that is really important is to go into this question with balance, really, because I think depending on the setting that, and let's not forget early years goes into primary schools as well, I think there is going to be a distinctive difference. So for me, it's about, there is an understanding of difference between adult initiated and child initiated play. And I think it's important that we go into it with that balance. And I think if you read my introduction in Play Matters, it makes that very, very clear. We are still a great resource for our children as adults, as educators. We do set up the environments. I think what we're not very good at, and I go back to the colleagues at Venture, is we don't sometimes take time to step back. I think we want to be too involved. So I think for me, adult initiated plays is more structured and guided by an adult. It's probably what we would call it as the teaching aspect of where we kind of get confused around play. And I think it's about how we plan with really specific goals in mind. For example, learning, social cooperation, exploring particular concepts like, for example, mathematics, counting, reading, phonics. What I would say, and I'm going to throw this out there, would we call that play? And I think that's the question for me. I think and that's kind of a reason why Play Matters has come out, because I think we're calling things play and we're disguising them as play, but actually truly are they play? And I think that's, for me,
that's really interesting. I'm going to pass that to Laura as well, really, in terms of your experience across the years and internationally, that balance between adult-led and child-led. What would your reflections on that be?
Yeah, I think Aaron's made some fantastic points as per. And I believe, on an international level, it's very, very different. And I think we do need to look into that. But as even when the colleagues were speaking from Venture and Aaron, one of my reflections that I made a note of for us to have a discussion about, I think it's about qualifications of individual. I'm calling everybody an educator, irrespective of their title. We're all educators. So I think we need to look at qualifications, and we need to look at ongoing personal professional development. And that's going to be, I think, different in different settings in terms of that understanding. Because I know if I'm doing it, delivering a keynote, delivering training, the understanding around not even just play, child development is colleagues having that understanding, what are the different, in terms of child development, what does that look like and what does that feel like? What does play look like for a 1-year-old? What does play look like for a 2-year-old, 3-year-old, 4-year-old, 5-year-old and 6-year-old? So I think it's subjective, really. And I still think that we still need to find that definition that works for everybody. But in terms of play, when I had play as a child in the 1970s, early 80s, is very different to how we have play now. In terms of spontaneous play from a child, in terms of it, on the other hand, being instigated by the adult? And is that okay? And I'm sure if there was 100 colleagues in this room, we all may come up with a different definition.
The bravery to play, I think, is an interesting point, but both on the part of the adults and the children themselves, and those suggestions about whether we've forgotten how to play is sometimes comes out. And I'd link that to Jenny and Zoe, really. The balance of parent, adult-led and child-led in the venture capacity, because and really I love that phrase from Aaron's, is that the adult should see themselves as a resource in the play. How would you respond to that in your circumstance?
I think we do a lot of scaffolding. So by standing back and observing, we're learning about the child and where they might be going next. And then we can offer in, you know, say, for example, some children are creating something in the mud pit. Then, you know, we could suggest they could use some clipboards and pens and paper to plan it. So we sort of guide them, I think. We sort of sensitively guide them in the direction that means that they are learning from their play, if we need to. But a lot of the time we do just hands off, just stand.
All right, I'm going to come back to you, but I think I'll bring in Aaron first. Linking that point to the standing back, how does that appear to third parties? Does it look like disengagement? And you think, Aaron, here, you know I'm talking about Ofsted. Yeah. And what we're back to that bravery issue in terms of feeling confident about being able to articulate your methodology.
If I'm honest, I actually heard Ofsted speak quite recently, and actually one of the lead Ofsted inspectors wasn't afraid to use the word play, and actually was really quite positive in doing exactly that, allowing children to have agency and play. I think the different what I think, yeah, you're absolutely right, and I think it's important to bring Ofsted into the conversation here. I think it's more of an issue in reception, if I'm honest, when we're talking about play. I think that the PVI settings and under 4 settings kind of understand the value of play, and that's not what I'm saying about reception. I think reception teachers and staff in reception have a lot of top-down pressures that come in because we're so transfixed on this school readiness approach, getting them ready for the national curriculum, that we've kind of lost sight of who are we doing it for. And then obviously they head teachers, for example, if you've noticed, I've done a bit of a post about head teachers. We need you at the moment. We need you to be advocates for play, because I think it's really important that we don't just focus on data, and data is important in, I've got lots of head teacher friends, but I think actually what we're losing sight of is the actual pedagogy. And I think that pedagogy, that deep knowledge that we need to allow our educators to be trusted and give them the empowerment to do that. So I think it's sometimes mixed messages, and what happens sometimes is you'll hear, for example, Ofsted do a talk, and there's 100, like, we'll go back to Laura's analogy, there's 100 people in that room. They'll all take away different ideas of what Ofsted are really saying. But actually, from what I took away from what Ofsted was saying was, you know your children, you know what's right for your children. And as long as you can justify that, then that's what we should be taking away from it. And I think and I go back to Laura's knowledge of qualification, because I think that is key here. I think we're losing the rigor of pedagogy and the reason why we do what we do.
Just moving that on to Laura, if I may. The other key stakeholder in this, the child, Ofsted, the practitioner, the parents. Do you get a sense from your experience that the parents accept that the primacy of the importance of play and the learning that goes with it, or does it seem as though they're separate boxes from when children learn?
Yeah, I believe so. I think equally putting on my parent hat now, and I think there's a point now, what we need to be looking at is how parents experience play themselves as a child to how they view play now. And I think bringing into the conversation here is around screen times and how there is a value of having screen time, not digressing, but I think it's an important point to reference here. And I believe that parents may need support in how we play with children, because also too, there's levels of, we need to look at economics, because there are some parents who are able to take their children out to experience things. And I know from the interim report that we had at the Play Commission, and I've got the stat here to read to you. Children, quote, children, 1 in 8 British households have no garden, which rises to more than 1 in 5 in London. Black families are nearly 4 times more likely than white families to have no access to outdoor space at home. Yeah. So I think we, as you know, on the outside, can have conversations with parents, we can produce reports, but actually, how are we getting out to those parents who need the support in terms of parenting and in terms of what I would say now, those underserved communities? And a good friend of mine called Winston, when people say, oh, those communities, parents, etc., it's hard to reach. And Winston always says, hard to ignore. So I think that we really need to be looking at how we support parents. And I know we've had conversations over the years about the value of Sure Start. And I know myself, when I worked in adult education, we used to do a lot of work in partnership with Sure Start centres. But I think that we really and truly need to, I think, support parents more holistically with raising their children and not bash parents over the head. You know, sometimes we see this, the headline, don't we, that comes out and it makes parents feel a lot worse. But I think we do need to be having, I think, as I'm talking about the government financially as well, support parents with their understanding of play and how, when we look at outdoor spaces like a beautiful day like today, how parents can get their children outside, you know, into parks, adventure playgrounds, etc.
Thank you. If you don't mind, I'm just going to invite Melanie Pilcher to come in here, and Quality and Standards Manager. Just looking back to your statement about screen time, I can imagine you were jumping up and down, Melanie, in terms of parents' support, understanding confusion, need for support about digital literacy, screen times et al. With play.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for bringing me in, Michael, because as you quite rightly say, I was chomping at the bit there to get in. And Laura, I absolutely agree that, you know, screen time is another thing that we're beating parents up about, aren't we? You know, because the focus, quite rightly, has been on keeping children safe online. But we're actually forgetting that actually, you know, children are growing up in a digital world now. We can't ignore that, but actually parents need to be supported with that. They need us to do a little bit of hand holding, not telling, not criticising, but just saying, okay, so we've got the safety side of it in place. Well, we'll never get it fully in place, but as far as we can. So let's actually now look at the positives and the benefits of that, and how, particularly for children with additional needs, how we can actually, you know, use digital media as a means for them to reach out to the world and communicate and connect with the world. So there you go. That's it from me.
Thank you. Jenny, Zoe, any screens or other resources venture or not?
We brought, when the changes in the EYFS came out, we brought in a television to one of our settings, simply because we were thinking, what do our children not get enough of? So we just wanted to use it to introduce different cultures, and so we sort of showed different dances and celebrations, festivals, that sort of thing.
So it's another resource from that point of view, rather than actually something part of time.
And we'll also sometimes use a phone when we're out and about to identify different plants, or to look up animals that they've found, or, you know, so from that point of view.
Can I just reflect back on the point I asked Aaron earlier on in terms of Ofsted's interpretation of your staff standing back and observing? Have you had any challenges in terms of explaining that methodology and approach to your various inspectors, or has it not been an issue?
No, I mean, our approach never really needs explaining. So I think now that Ofsted, what they're looking for is what is it like to be a child in this setting. They come, they immerse themselves, they observe the children, and they observe the staff, and they question them about what exactly are you doing. You know, it could appear that they're just standing there. They can see the value in it by spending the day with the children. It's really obvious when you're there. And I think actually because the children know what's happening, there's a culture at Venture of their independence, and they're collaborating together and they're communicating together, and they know the adults are there. Although it's an unobtrusive approach, they know that the adults are there, the adults are strong and there when they need them. The culture of Venture is so obvious when you're there that it doesn't really need explaining to inspectors, as far as we found during our inspection.
Thank you. Excellent. And I'm delighted. Laura, we've just had a reference there to culture again. I just wanted to bring something back to something you mentioned earlier on in terms of the individuality of play and children maybe with additional needs, disabilities and different cultures. In your experience, is play different for different children in different circumstances?
I think yes and no, so to speak. But I think one of the things that, in terms of quoting what I did before, coming from that interim report from the Play Commission, was at that disadvantage level for different communities. And I think that's a conversation that we must have. And looking at variety, colleagues, excuse me, I am super dyslexic, so it's the indigenous communities, is that correct? Yeah. And all we have now in terms of, forest school and beach schools, and many communities like the Gypsy Roma travel community, that was how their children played. I know my background is Caribbean heritage, how my parents play when I visit the Caribbean, how those children play quite loosely outside with no adults. When I was a child, we used to make up games. We used to have this game called the swing game, and people would be sitting on swing, somebody would throw a ball and we would kick it, and things like that are no longer there. And I think for many different communities, and an example, a colleague of mine has got a lovely children's picture book called The Flower Block. I don't know if any of you have seen it, by Lanisha Butterfield. It's beautiful. It's a modern take in Jack and the Beanstalk. So when at the top, there's a roof garden, and I interviewed Lanisha for my podcast, My Words, My Book, and I was nodding everything she was saying, that actually in private apartments, they have a beautiful roof terrace, but in social housing, we don't have that. So Lanisha, like myself, we were raised within social housing and cross-reference the lack of opportunities. And we've both got the same publisher, which is down near the American Embassy in Vauxhall. And there's two beautiful apartment blocks, and there's a swimming pool that goes across both of these apartment blocks, yeah?
With a glass floor as well, doesn't it?
That's right. So the argument there is we need to really be looking at the opportunities that are available for working class communities, and why don't we have where there is a lack of space within social housing. So I think these are the conversations that we need to have, and sometimes I think our solutions need to be more diverse rather than it be coming from a middle class lens, because for some parents we can talk play, etc., but the most important thing for them is providing a meal for their child. So we really need to, in the area that I was raised in, I was fortunate to have a park, to have an adventure playground. To a point, my book Myra and Marley is based on that adventure playground and that richness of play. But I think we really do need to, if any government ministers are going to be looking at this podcast, we do need to invest in the working class communities and making sure every single child, irrespective of geography, has equal access to play.
Thank you. Aaron, anything to add in terms of recognising differences around play and how will these get supported?
Well, I think I'm just going to pick up on a comment that Laura's just made around our ministers and people. You know, they really want our children. They keep using the words "the best start in life," and for me, really, the best start in life is to give our children the best possible opportunities for play. I think, you know, our settings, our parks, you know, we've kind of lost sight of actually giving children that best start in life, and giving them the joy of play. You know, I think it's really important. What I would say about children with additional needs or disabilities, I think we clump children together. And one thing that Play Matters tried to do was to really take it back to that unique child. Just because you might have 3 children with, you know, who are neurodiverse, doesn't mean that they're all going to like the same things and do the same things. And I think play is quite magical in that way, because it allows children to lead what they enjoy and what they don't enjoy as well. And one thing that we picked up in Play Matters was that all children must love sensory play, but actually for some children who do have additional needs and disabilities may not enjoy sensory play. So again, that's when we really do take it back to knowing your pedagogy of play and taking it back to the unique child.
Thank you. That's really interesting, because that leads me on sort of to the moving into the summary stage of the discussion. Well, we picked up the thread throughout today's discussion around the importance of knowledgeable and creative educators. Jenny and Zoe, what message do you want to convey to educators in terms of promoting play from a venture perspective?
Basically, get out of children's way is our motto, really. Less is more, less is more. You know, the adults are obviously there, but actually at venture, it feels to the children almost like they're not there until they need us, and then we're there.
Okay, then, when somebody applies for a job with you, do you have to express that to them, or how do you know that they're going to be good at getting out of the way?
Yeah, we do. It's interesting, actually. Quite often, people that have actually already worked in early years find it really, really difficult to work for venture. We actually find that people who are not trained really with young children actually find it much easier to take on the approach, because otherwise you've got to unlearn everything about basically looking busy. I think the fear among staff sometimes is we've got to look like we're doing something. And if you're standing there observing a child and thinking, and just watching them to keep them safe in the outdoor environment, you can't really see what that adult's doing. So I think the fear, we try to persuade staff not to worry about what other people are thinking of what they look like they're doing or not doing. So when we're looking for to recruit somebody, it's about them having the confidence to do what they think is right in the moment, and not look busy and look like they're teaching and look like they're adding value.
That's really interesting. Thank you. Same question to you, Laura. Message to convey to educators about promoting children's own choice in play.
I think I would echo what Jenny and Zoe just said. Really, it's about standing back and observing. And I just to always quote Julie Fisher around that in interacting or interfering. But that leads me back to my previous point on the values of the setting, because obviously, Jenny and Zoe, you've got your own unique values, and that's what your educators work to, and every single setting is different. But I think coming back to that, just to repeat the importance of qualifications that have that sound understanding around child development, and equally too around play. And I think that play should be a whole module in itself, unpicking the theories. I think there are a few educators who don't have an understanding of theorist, and in terms of how that is reflected back into play. So I think it's for every single educator who works with children to make it as a priority to understand what play is and what play means to the child, their way.
beautifully brought us round, but I am going to give the last word to Aaron. Thank you, Laura. Educator or any other barriers to play, and what do we need to do to overcome?
I think sometimes we just need to put ourselves in the children's shoes at that moment in time. And I think what we're very, very good at is trying to, I go back to what Jenny and Zoe said, we want to look busy. But actually, the most powerful thing we can do is to take that step back and really, truly hear the voice of the child. And the best place sometimes of that is the role play area. And I always say the role play area is quite a magical place where learning is happening, conversation, language, mathematics skills. And I think we've lost a little bit of the importance of observation, because obviously we've had this whole push on workload, but observation is so important, because observation tells me if my children are school ready. Observation tells me if language is happening. And I always say to practitioners and educators, how would you feel if a 50-year-old person jumped into the home corner, as you know, and you're 2 and 3? It's not really quite street credible. So, you know, we've just got to always put ourselves in the shoes of the children at that moment in time. And don't be afraid, and I do this in a lot of my training and my talks, to say, just take a step back, spend half an hour a day, because in that half an hour, you'll know more about whether that child knows their phonics, their numbers, and their language skills than making them sit next to you having to do a phonics scheme. And I'm just throwing that out there.
Well, on that note, if you don't mind, I think I will draw us to a close. That's been a fascinating conversation. My thanks to all of you for taking part. And it just vindicates for me why we chose the title that we did for this year's Play Week. It's been a pleasure to have the time with you this morning. Melanie is our executive producer. If you don't mind ending the recording, I will just say goodbye to everybody and thank you for joining us. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye. Bye-bye.